Hey you guys, I've had a lot of you ask me how I make ghee, and I thought it would be a really fun video to show you how I actually do it. So I've got everything set up, and here's how we're going to do it. I'll start it. We'll cut a few times because it's about a 30-minute process. So I put, as you can see, 2 pounds of unsalted organic butter, and out here we use this beautiful butter by the Strauss Dairies. Put it in a heavy saucepan with a heavy bottom, and turn the fire down. You don't really need to stir it when you're making ghee, and I just like to kind of play in it. As you can see, it's just beginning to melt, and in a minute we're going to have another camera showing you what's happening inside the pot. So we'll take a few minutes and we'll just let the sticks of butter melt. And I'd like to say one more thing. When I start the process of making ghee, to me it's more than just cooking. It really is a sacred time, and I clear my consciousness, and I just bring a lot of clarity and cleanliness to the kitchen and hold the space so that as this ghee is consumed, it's really delicious and it's medicinal and it feels holy and healthy in your body. So we'll be back in a second and you'll see what's happening next. Alright, I wanted to tell you about the rest of the equipment that you'll need. So a heavy pan, and I like to use a wooden little tool here just to kind of, I like the straight edge because at the end I'll use the same tool to scrape off the bottom, but we'll get into that. We don't scrape the bottom until we're totally done. I have a clean glass jar, and it's been sterilized, and it is a tempered glass jar, which is an important factor because the ghee is really hot when you pour it in. I have a strainer that also has been sterilized, and it just so happens to fit in perfectly. And I have some cheesecloth that you can buy at the grocery store, and I cut a small piece of it, so I'll pull it tight. I'll show you how much I cut. Make like a little square, fold it in half, and then fold it one more time. So I like it pretty thick, and then just lay it in a handy little way right there in the strainer. You can buy these strainers at the market also. Have it filling up the strainer so you can see it covers the whole thing. And it's really nice if you can get a strainer that literally fits in the jar. This is the same ghee jar I use all the time, and that way it makes life pretty easy. The ghee jar, as you can see, it's one of these jars that has the lid that can seal, and that way it keeps anything out. There are 2 things that I've seen go wrong with making ghee. One is if the jar has any moisture in it, even a tiniest drop of condensation in the lid or a drop of water down in here, that can mold the ghee and ruin the ghee, because ghee does not need to be refrigerated. It can sit out all the time. Ours is consumed pretty quickly in this house, so it doesn't sit around for very long, but I'd say with 2 pounds of butter, it'll fill this jar up, and with several of us cooking, we go through this in probably just a couple weeks. You might take longer with it. So you don't want any condensation in the jar. It needs to be very dry and clean. And the other mistake that lots of times we make is when we're finished, we'll pull this out, and what I'll do is I'll let the lid, and I'll show you this at the end, just kind of be resting open. And I will leave it open all night long, because you think that the ghee is cooled, but just takes the teeniest amount of heat to form condensation, and then all the beautiful work you just did goes to mold. So let's not have that happen. So right now, again, it's not necessary, but I like to kind of play and just help it along, and I'm just stirring, as you can see, not even really getting involved. Everything is very clean. This is clean, this spoon rest, the pot, the whole area around the stove is clean. You don't have to be fanatical, but I just prefer it that way in case I lay something down. And so, you know, in India, ghee is viewed as a very sacred food and medicine. And from the Ayurvedic standpoint, what we do with ghee is we do a lot. So for high pitta in your eyes, if you've been surfing or just outside and the sun has been burning your eyes, or your eyes feel red and itchy and tired, you can take some of the ghee when you're first making it and get a second little, very clean little tiny jar, pour a little bit of the ghee in the small jar, strain it the same way, keep that by your bedside table, and then at night before you go to sleep, use a clean tool, if it's a tiny spoon, or even if you feel safe with your finger being clean, you just can take a touch of the ghee. You can pull your eye down and just wipe the ghee softly against your eye. Make sure your finger's really clean. Ghee is great to remove excess pitta from the eyes, which looks like inflammation and redness and itchiness. Very moisturizing. You can't do anything after that, so you need to do it right when you're going to sleep. You can't really read or anything. You want to have quiet and dark after you've done it. Ghee is also a really incredible moisturizing agent for the nasal passages. And again, once in a while from an Ayurvedic point of view, we will put ghee in the nostrils. So you might have the ghee in a small jar or a little tiny bottle with a dropper, and you can warm that in another cup of hot water. Take the small bottle, put it in the hot water, let the ghee melt, test it on your wrist first to make sure that it's not burning, and then you can just put a few drops in the nose, or you can also just take a Q-tip and that's clean and put it in there and put it in the nostrils. You will smell ghee, so I hope you like the smell, and that's another great way of moisturizing the nasal passages. So now back to this, we are seeing that it's starting to melt. What seems to be another sticking point is we're never sure how long do we cook the ghee. So we're going to go through the whole process of allowing it to melt, and it'll go through all of its different stages. All right, I'm going to take a second. Be right back. So now you can see we're moving into what I would call maybe, I don't know, the second phase. The first phase is just melting the butter, and it was all just this creamy yellow, right? And now we want to make sure we're not heating it too fast. So as you can see, I'm really monitoring the flame, keeping it almost a little too high. And how do I know that? Because I want it to have these little bubbles that you're seeing now coming through the foam. So the first big change is it went from the creamy yellow. As you can see now, this white foam is coming. I don't need to do what I'm doing. I enjoy this process. It feels very special. And in my heart, I've just got a mantra chanting. Now you can see the white foam is beginning to dissipate. You can see the bubbles, and we're going to listen. You can hear it. If you listen, you'll notice if it's cooking too fast too. I think it's at a good pace. You can see there's a consistent flow of the bubbles. I think making ghee in and of itself is quite frankly an exquisite meditation, bringing awareness and calm and consciousness to the food. I use ghee for everything. It's a great oil for heating up things on the stove, like when I'm making a curry or any of the dals. I always take another pot and take some of the ghee, put it in the bottom of the pot, and then I add all of my spices. All the spices that we cook with in Ayurveda, which are so colorful and fragrant, from turmeric, cumin, coriander, fennel, fenugreek, and the list goes on. But mostly those are the really big ones that we use a lot in different proportions. And cinnamon, if you put these spices in the bottom of your pan with a little bit of ghee and heat it up, then, and especially if you're using whole seeds, as they begin to warm, the oil from the spice is released, and there's a beautiful fragrance and flavor that comes out. I prefer to do that over just adding spices to the water. In fact, I never do that. I always put it in with the ghee. And generally, I cook with so much ginger. Just, you can buy it at the grocery store. This is really fresh. Oh my God, this is so good. And it's really nice to just have ginger on hand. I don't cook with very much garlic. just because of the energy of the garlic. I know it's a great antioxidant, but I prefer to use more ginger. And sometimes I'll use a sweet onion. So sauteing finely chopped ginger along with the spices. And then after that's been going for a little while and it smells really fragrant, then I'll add in the other vegetables, and then I'll add in the beans or the lentils that I'm cooking. In fact, we're going to do a video on how to make chana masala, one of my favorite dishes, and I'll show you how to do that. And I'd like to show you also how to stock your kitchen. Things like just having different items on standby so that when you come home from a long day at work, it doesn't feel stressful to figure out what am I going to make for dinner. Some days we have time and we want to stop at the fresh market and get things. Some days we're tired and we don't have time. So it's really nice to have a pantry that serves you rather than you being the servant to trying to figure out every meal. And I'll show you that in another video, how to stock your kitchen, how to keep your spices really fragrant and fresh, and how to blend them into different blends. So we've got a lot of different things coming to you, and the first one is the ghee. Now you can see how the little particles, the white milk solids, are forming into little globs, and the bubbles are uniform across the top, and just watching it. Another thing I do is I'm paying attention to what I'm saying to you and what I'm saying to the ghee, because I do believe that my voice carries a vibration, my energy. Way before I discovered yoga and Ayurveda, I had a mother who was wise enough to share with me, and maybe you did too, because I'm from the South. Born and raised in the South, and we baked a lot. Bread and cookies and cakes and pies, and so I learned probably by the time I was about 8 years old how to make pie crust and biscuits. And it's really funny because my mother would say to me, don't ever bake with any anger in your heart because it'll come through your hands. And as a little girl, I really thought about that a lot, and I baked with a lot of love in my heart and in my hands, and that has translated to this day. I shared that with my kids when they were growing up, and we spent many a rainy and snowy Saturday baking lots of cookies. So as you can see now, it's really changing. The white milk solids, which in Ayurveda we recognize that as what you would call the LDL part of the cholesterol, right? It's that lethal part that sticks into our arteries and clogs us up. So that is being clarified and dropping down into the bottom of the pan. That's why I do not stir with the thing all the way in the bottom. I just like to play, and I'm just kind of scraping the bubbles off the top. But mostly it's just doing a beautiful job all by itself. And you can still see little white chunky particles kind of bubbling up, and then they get heavy and they'll just do their own job. They will settle to the bottom. So I know I told you at the beginning to use unsalted butter. Don't forget unsalted and of course organic butter. And it's worth the price. I think I probably pay, could be $9 a pound for the butter. But to have this much ghee for about $18, if you go to the store and you buy ghee that's already made, I don't even know the price. I've never done that, to tell you the truth. I learned to make it years ago, and I've been making it myself ever since. I recognize, though, sometimes we're busy, you're rushing your kids and work and everything, so do what you need to do. But you can teach your kids to make ghee. I taught my adult kids how to make ghee, and they're great at making their own ghee. It's very much a part of their cooking regimes. So I leave the ghee sitting out in my kitchen all the time. I don't refrigerate it, and you don't need to, no matter how hot the climate is. It will liquefy if you're in a really warm climate, and it will not ever solidify again like butter does, but it's just really soft. All right, now look at it. There's like a second foaming action that's coming. You can see when I scrape back the foam that the ghee has gone to an almost clear state. So you can see that it's turning like what I call liquid gold. And this is a critical stage because definitely we can burn the ghee. So I'm going to check the flame and just a smidge more. I don't need this phase to go fast. I'm only scraping the surface back with my little wooden tool to keep an eye on the bottom of the pan. I'm watching in the bottom, and I can see that it's still mostly white on the bottom. And I love for it to just get a very light golden brown. And did I mention don't leave the ghee unattended? Think of it like an infant. Do not leave it unattended on the stove. Don't try to go off and multitask. Make this a meditation if you will, if you like. Make it a process. So now I'm just going to tilt the pan because for me I really want to see better. So I'm just tilting it carefully until I can see the bottom of the pan, and you can see how the edge is kind of a little golden brown, and then there's still white pieces. So this is really, look at that. Look at how golden brown, and guess what? It's ready. You don't need to cook it a little longer and make double certain. You can see right now it's clear, liquid gold. So I turn the heat off, and because this glass jar has been sitting on this granite countertop and I feel that it could be a little cold, I'm going to let the ghee sit in the pan for a short amount of time, maybe 20 minutes, just so it just removes the first big intensive layer of heat. You can let it sit as long as you want, maybe even an hour if you're worried about it cracking the jar. We've actually had that happen. It's not cold in my house. It's probably almost 68 degrees, so that matters too. If you're in a cold climate and your house is cool, you have to think of all these little factors. It's kind of a bummer when you've gone to all this trouble and then you crack the jar. So we're going to stop and we'll come back when we're ready to pour it through the strainer. Alright, so we're going to pour the ghee through the cheesecloth, and that's there to really catch any other milk solids that, just really the foam on the top. So here we go. Just slowly pouring it through, keeping it in the center of the cheesecloth. You can see the bottom of the pan. It's totally perfect. It's not burnt. And that's done. Take this out. It's very hot, so be mindful of that. So as you can see, look down in the pot. This is what's left in the pot, and it's super easy to clean. You just take this and it'll just scrape off. So don't let this go in your sink or your dishwasher, because clearly it's a mess. Personally, I take it and I put it in the waste, and it's gone, and then I just wash the pan. So look at this. Here's your beautiful ghee, completely golden. Yes, it's very hot. I'm not even going to shut that halfway for a couple of hours. Don't worry about the little bit that got through on the top. It's perfectly fine. If it bothers you, you can take a spoon and take it off later, a very clean spoon. So here are the last two details for making ghee. Number one, you need to always use a clean utensil every time you go into the ghee. If you are taking a butter knife and you take the ghee, put it on your toast, or you put a spoon into it and put it in the pot for the spices to cook, and then that touches the spices, get a clean spoon, because you can contaminate the ghee. So treat it very sacred and special, and it will serve your body, and it totally lubricates your insides, and it helps all systems to be in the flow. So happy cooking. Satnam. So if you're enjoying this, like and subscribe my YouTube channel, which I'm just getting off the ground. And also feel free to go to my website. There's a lot of information, including a lot of the sacred mantras that I was talking about. www.divinelightyoga.com. Thank you. Was that good?
Yeah.